Picture someone who has always had your full attention. Every message answered within minutes, every mood tracked, every reaction managed. You have shaped your days around them without even realizing it. And then one day, quietly, you stop. You don't argue. You don't explain. You simply step back and something unexpected happens. The person who once made you feel invisible suddenly cannot stop thinking about you. This is not a coincidence, and it is not weakness on their part that you are witnessing. It is something much more specific, much more revealing. Psychologists call it narcissistic injury. It happens when someone with deeply narcissistic patterns loses their source of attention, admiration, or emotional reaction. In plain terms, when you stop feeding the cycle, something in them breaks open, and the panic that follows tells you everything about what was really happening all along. But why does this pattern exist in the first place? Why do some people become so dependent on the attention of others that silence from you feels like a crisis to them? For some, it begins in childhood, a child who was only valued when they performed, when they achieved, when they impressed. Love felt conditional. Approval had to be earned over and over again. So they learned early that their worth lived outside themselves, in the eyes of other people. The need for constant attention is not arrogance. It is armor built over an old wound. For others, it comes from the opposite experience. A child who was told they were exceptional in every way, protected from failure, never allowed to feel ordinary. They grew up believing the world owed them a kind of permanent applause. When that applause stops, even briefly, the silence feels unbearable. Not because they are strong, because underneath everything, they are terrified of being nothing. And there are those who develop these patterns through years of relationships where control felt like the only way to feel safe. Attention meant power. Power meant they would not be abandoned. So they learned to pull people close, keep them unsettled, and make themselves the center of every room. Losing that center feels like losing gravity. Inside that mind, when you go quiet, something sharp begins to move. The first feeling is often disbelief. Surely this is temporary. Surely you will come back. They replay your last conversation, looking for the moment they lost control. They think about how to reach you, which version of themselves to send first. The charming one, the wounded one, the angry one. They cycle through these quickly, testing, calculating, even if they do not consciously realize they are doing it. What they do not feel or cannot access easily is genuine reflection. The question is never truly, what did I do? It is always, how do I fix this for me? And underneath all of that noise is something they will rarely name, even to themselves, a cold, quiet fear. The fear that without your attention, they do not fully exist. That is not a metaphor. For someone with strong narcissistic patterns, other people function as mirrors. You reflect them back to themselves. When you turn the mirror away, they lose the image, and that image was the only self they knew how to see. But carrying this pattern for years, building a life around needing to be the most important person in every room, it costs something profound. The relationships become performances. Intimacy never quite lands, because real closeness requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels dangerous. They exhaust themselves managing perceptions, reading reactions, adjusting the version of themselves on display. Deep down, many of them feel chronically unseen, even while demanding to be constantly looked at. The loneliness inside a narcissistic pattern is one of the quietest, most painful ironies in human psychology. So why don't they change? Why, even when they feel this cost, do they not reach for something different? Because the pattern works. Not perfectly, not without damage, but it works enough. Attention keeps coming, people return, the cycle resets, and change requires looking directly at the wounded, frightened, ordinary self beneath the performance. That is a terrifying thing to face when your entire life has been built on never being ordinary, never being vulnerable, never being just enough without proof. There are signs that help you recognize this dynamic even when it moves quietly. You may notice that someone becomes significantly more interested in you the moment you pull back. The calls increase. The messages become warmer, more urgent, more loving than usual. You may notice that their reaction to your silence is entirely about them, how your distance makes them feel, what your absence says about them. never what your withdrawal might mean for you. You may also notice the pattern cycles. Warmth returns, things feel good, and then slowly the old dynamic rebuilds itself. The subtle dismissals, the pushing of boundaries, the pulling of your attention back to center. And, perhaps most telling, you may notice that genuine accountability is rare. An apology arrives, but it is always slightly incomplete. It explains rather than owns. It softens rather than truly meets you. Here is the quiet truth to sit with. When someone panics because you have finally gone still, they are not panicking because they love you deeply. They are panicking because you were serving a function. And the moment you recognize that, something in you shifts. Not with anger, not even with sadness necessarily, just with clarity. You were never the problem, you were the mirror. And mirrors, it turns out, are allowed to turn away.